I'm going to start with this color as the base, just so you can see the difference in it. And I did get this on Amazon. This is beige. And then I've got the green and the pink. They have lots of colors. And this is, it's called a t-shirt yarn. However, it's not cotton, but it is very stretchy, which makes it really easy to work with. These bottoms that you buy online, they don't all have the same number of holes. Even if you get, like mine's a 6-inch. So even if you buy a 6-inch base, it may have a different hole number than mine does. So this one has 37 holes, but this one, same size base, but it has 34 holes. So I had to change up the beginning pattern just a little bit. So I'll explain that. We're going to start with a 4mm hook just to get started, because the 6mm is too big. We're going to start with slip stitching around the edge. And when you do this, you need to have a tail about that long. Not real long, but you do need a little bit of a tail that we're not going to weave in just yet. So leave that tail hanging out. And then with your working strand, do a slip stitch. You can see how stretchy this yarn is. This yarn needs a bigger hook, so when you're starting off with the smaller hook, it doesn't pull through quite as easy, but when you move up to the next hook, it will. So just put a slip stitch in every hole all the way around. Okay, I am at the end with one hole left, so pull your yarn up just a little bit and then come over to this hole and take your tail and pull your tail through that hole. Pull it all the way through. Go back into your loop. Take that tail, pull that tail through. Go through your first loop. Pull the tail through. And then go through this hole right here, but come through the middle of that stitch. Grab your tail, pull it all the way through. And then it should look like solid stitches all the way across. Now we're going to go right there where your tail is. That is the hole that you're going to start with. You're still using your 4mm hook. Grab your yarn and pull through and make one stitch. This is going to be the first stitch in your row. So before you get started with your base, this is going to sound really confusing, and I don't know how to explain it for it to not be confusing. But before you get started, after you do your slip stitching around, you need to count how many holes you have. This one has 37. The other one I did has 34, even though it's the same size base. So you can't just go by all 6-inch bases are the same, because they're not. So you need to count the pattern to see how many stitches you will have. So you start with an increase, which is 2 stitches, and then you do 2 single, and then you go back into an increase, 2 single. So count your stitches, and you will end with an increase stitch. So there will be 2 increases side by side right here. So when you count how many stitches that will be total, if that number is not a multiple of 3, then you need to go add a stitch or 2 somewhere. You'll either have to add 1 or 2. You're obviously not going to need to add 3. So mine worked out to where I had 50 stitches, which is not a multiple of 3. So I knew I needed to add 1 stitch somewhere. So I just came straight across and I just added another increase over here to give me the extra stitch that I needed. So the reason you need a multiple of 3 is so that this pattern, when you go around, has 2 stitches in between each of your green stem. If you don't have multiples of 3, then somewhere along the line you're going to have either 3 stitches between or 1 stitch between. So this will be our second single crochet, and then we'll do a single crochet, and then a single crochet, and then an increase. So 2 single crochets here, and then a single crochet, and a single crochet. So now I'm over here and I'm pretty close to being across from where I started, so I need to add a stitch. I just did the increase single single, so now I'm going to do increase because it's a 3-stitch pattern, and you don't want to mix up the 3-stitch pattern, so you want to make sure that you're still okay. So this is my increase. And then normally I would do single single, so I'm going to do 1 single. But then instead of doing a single here, I'm going to do another increase. But then I want to go right back into my pattern so that my numbers stay what I need to be. So that starting again, you're going to do another increase, because now that increase should have been a single, which starts your next pattern. So you will have 2 increase stitches right next to each other if you are adding a stitch. So then I just continue on with the increase single single. And then just going to continue doing the same pattern. The last stitch should be an increase. So if your base has 37 holes like mine, then you will have 2 increases by each other where you started, the first one and the last one, and then straight across you should have 2 increases next to each other there, and then the rest should just be your increase single pattern. So lift up your hook, go to the first stitch from the back, go through both loops, pull your yarn through, and then go in the middle of that loop right there, and then also go through the middle. You see where these stitches have a V? We're going to go in between the stitch there, but also through the middle here. So take your yarn, your hook through the middle, and then go through that V, and then also go through the back bump. So this right here are your back bumps all the way across, so we're going to go through that back bump, go back through the loop, tighten that loop up, and go through. Pull up and yarn over. We're going to switch to the 6 hook, so if you want to do your 1 chain with 6. And then when you do that first row, if you want, you can work in your tail. I should have worked the tail in, or you can just weave it in at the end. And now we're just going to do single crochets, 1 in each stitch in the back loop only. So that's the reason you came through the middle here. So here is our first stitch. Go through the back loop only and the back bump. We're going to use the 6 crochet hook for the rest of the project. We're just going to do that back loop only and the back bump all the way around, 1 in every stitch. Okay, I got my last stitch in this row. Pull up your loop, go to the back of your first stitch, pull your loop through, and now we're going to start the waistcoat single crochet stitch. So we're going to insert the hook through that V in that stitch, the one that is under where you did your slip stitch across. So go in there, put the loop back on your hook, tighten it up, yarn over and pull through, and you can see that the yarn comes through the middle V, and then chain 1. Now at this point you should be able to pull the walls up of your basket. And for the remaining part of the base, we're just going to do the waistcoat single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around, basically until you run out of yarn. If you're using this same yarn that I did this basket is one entire one entire skein of yarn with just a little bit left over. I mean, obviously I couldn't use every bit of it. I used it until I had enough to complete a row, and then I stopped. So that gives you your stitch number 1 in that row. And to do the waistcoat, if you haven't done it before, instead of putting your hook, this is what a normal single crochet would be like to go in there. But you insert your hook in between the V. I think it gives it a tighter look. You don't have any of the little spaces between your stitches like you get normally. And that's all you do. You just go in that little V. You will end every row of your basket base the same. So when you get your last stitch in, loosen up your yarn. Do the same way as before. Come in the back of your first stitch. This right here is your chain 1, so you're not going into that. That is going to end up being the first stitch of your next row. So come over. And you can see it's right there. It pulls up when you bring your yarn over, and then you're going to go into the middle of that stitch, put your yarn back on your hook, tighten it up just a little bit, yarn over, pull through, then do your chain 1. And then that is what's going to be the start of your next row. So just continue. You can see when you start that next row that it sort of leans that over to the side a little bit. But when you come over and do your last stitch here and then yarn over, and it will pull that back up for you to go into, and that's how you start your next row. And that will allow your stitches to stay straight. So this is the start of each row right here. You can see, I don't know if you can see the inside there, where that seam is, right there. That is the beginning of each row. So you can see on the outside, it looks pretty good. It's not really easy to tell where your rows start. So just keep doing those rows of your waistcoat single crochets until you either get the height of the basket you want or till your yarn runs out, which mine is going to be till my yarn runs out because it's a pretty small skein of yarn. I believe this yarn is about 65 yards, so that kind of gives you an idea. A lot of t-shirt yarns are bigger, and so you may not need the whole thing unless you just want a really tall basket. This is going to be my last row because I'm almost done with my yarn and I want to have enough for the top stitch. So when you end this row and come through, don't do your chain one. So instead, we're going to do a slip stitch all the way around the edge. And we're not going to go into this first stitch, we're going to go into the next one. And we're not doing the waistcoat stitch this time, we're going to go into the regular stitch at the top. And pull it a little bit loose when you come through. If you pull too tight, it will make the top of the basket sort of come in and be more, be smaller around the top than it will be at the bottom. So when you bring your yarn through, kind of pull up a little bit before you complete your slip stitch. Go all the way around. You get to the last one and you can see where the yarn came through the middle of your V. So you want your slip stitch to go in that same spot. So instead of going in here, you want to go right down in there. Pull your yarn through. And then put your hook through the back in there and bring it through. Pull it kind of tight so that you don't see it. And then I'm going to weave this in to the basket. I'm just going to go straight down the seam on the inside. Cut. And then because I didn't weave my tail in at the beginning, I'm going to weave that in. I'm just going to take that through these pieces here. And cut. So you can see the seam on the inside, but on the outside, it blends pretty well. So now we're going to do the green part. So this is where your multiples of 3 is going to come into play. This is the same brand of yarn. We're still going to be using the 6mm, and you can start the green anywhere you want. I just usually start it where the seam is. So cast on your yarn and chain 1. So this is our first stitch where the seam is, and this is where our last stem is going to come in. And so the reason that you need the skip 2 is because this will be the last one, and it needs to have 2 spaces in between it. So if we're looking down here, this one is not counting because this is where we're starting. So then we're going to skip this one, we're going to skip this one, and then we're going to work into this row. Now I go down 3 stitches, but you can just do 2 if you want, or you can do more. It depends on how far you want your like little stems to go. So I'm going to do 3. So we're working in this row right here. So 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to try to work that tail in. So insert your hook. 1, 2, 3. And then yarn over, pull through, and then pull up to the height of the basket. Now on right here, because stretching all the way down here makes this loose up here, and you don't want that. So I take the back loop and I pull it so that it pulls that part tight, and then pull this part for your working yarn, and then yarn over and pull through. That way this is going to be nice and tight, otherwise you're going to have it really loose. So that's basically like a spike, a kind of a diagonal spike single crochet. So we're going to do 2 more of those. So insert your hook into the same spot. I'm going to bring my tail over here. And then yarn over. This is just a regular single crochet. Pull up. And then I'm going to pull this back loop to tighten my loop up a little bit. Then use your working yarn. And complete. We're going to do 1 more. Once you get your tail worked in, it'll be a little bit easier. It's a little bit cumbersome with that tail in the way. So that is your first stem. And now you're going to skip 2. We're going to work in that spot right there. So skip 2, go here. And tighten this up. And do 2 more. And you do that all the way around. Skip 2, go to the next one. Skip 2, go to the next one. Okay, I'm at the end. So I'm going to do my last stem, and it's going to go in that stitch where your column is. So right where your casting on was, that's the row that you're going to go in, and that would give you 2 stitches on each side. And when you complete that, you're going to end your row just like you did before, where you're going to come to the front. So this last stem is covering up that stitch. So go behind and join. And then cut your yarn. And then I'm going to come from behind. I'm going to go on this back bump. Oops. And that stitch. Grab my tail. And then you can weave your tail in. To do the flower, you can start on any green section that you want. And looking down at your green 3 single crochets that you did, you want to go in the middle so that each side has 3 strands. So there's 3 on that side and 3 on this side. And that's going to put you right inside that stitch. So take a look, do just a little bit of tail, cast onto that, go through that hole, pull your yarn through. I'm going to tuck this tail over so it gets crocheted in so it doesn't come loose, and then just do a chain 1, and then you're going to do 5 single crochets in the same stitch. And when you do your single crochet, pull your loop up a little bit. So that's 1. And that's 5. Take your hook out of your loop, go to your first single crochet loop, so count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that should be the first one. Go through that loop, and then put your last loop back on your hook, and then you can kind of put your finger in the middle to sort of push it in, and then pull tight on that, and then connect them, which is the same way that you do a popcorn stitch. So if you've ever done a popcorn stitch, it's just, you're going to close it up the same way. And then chain 1, And then we're going to do another single crochet, but we're going to go in the center of the flower. So put your hook inside the center, come out through the back, and then complete your single crochet, and then chain one. And then cut your yarn, pull through, and then put your hook in the back of that flower pocket that comes up through the middle, and then tuck in your 2 tails, and then cut your excess off. And that's it. And then you just do that all the way around. Okay, I have almost ran out of yarn, but there will be enough to do this last one. If you are wondering how many baskets you can do with this yarn, the base color, I use 1 skein per basket for this 6-inch base. The green, I did 3 baskets, and I have quite a bit of green left. This entire skein of pink did 3 baskets. So you get 3 baskets out of your flower color. You get 1 basket out of your base color, and you're going to get probably 4 or 5 baskets out of your green color. Okay, this is the last flower. I like to do all of the flowers and then cut the tails later. It just kind of, I have a production personality, so that's how I do it. And then you can go around and sort of shape your tulips in case they're leaning in. And then I'm just going to go through and cut them. And then if you want, you can go through and kind of tuck in where you cut your tails. If you want to just kind of hide it a little bit, or you can take a crochet hook and stick it in there and tuck it inside. This yarn is pretty malleable because of how stretchy it is, so you can kind of make it do stuff that other yarn won't do.